fiscal year 2000 sounded far off. And now, yes, I'm that old, but fiscal year 2032. So the county is made up of the overall government, which we control, and I have the honor to serve at the leadership of. But we also have a variety of other entities that are part of the enterprise that are created in state law, that are fiscally dependent upon the county government for funding, but they are independent for a lot of decision making. The Montgomery County Public Schools, Montgomery College, the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Montgomery County Division, those are all created in state law. As you know, when it comes to the MCPS budget, the school board gets its final say on the budget. They will submit a request to the county executive in February. So, but the superintendent will lay out a proposed recommended budget to the Board of Education at some point in the middle of December, and then the Board of Education will hold hearings to develop their final plan, submitted to the county executive. The county executive has to submit his budget to the county council on the operating side on March 15th, because that is a Saturday this year. It'll be March 17th, and on January 15th for the capital budget. On the capital budget, the superintendent's already released a recommended plan that is pending before the Board of Education. I know they have a work session tomorrow on the capital budget, so they have to then make their final set of recommendations and decisions and then submit a proposed budget to the county executive. So Montgomery College has to go through the same thing, the Park and Planning Commission, and even WSSC Water follows a similar process. They submit it all to us. We have to pull together a recommended balanced budget, give it to the council, and the council then has hearings to decide. Was into place on July 1st of next summer. Sorry that I went through, I gave you more or less all the information on this slide while I was talking, but on the prior slide, but here is where we are in the September, November community engagement, asking for comments. We are collecting all of the requests. Again, I'm talking about the operating budget. All of the requests from the county departments are being submitted over the next few weeks. There are in budget, and there are many analysts here from OM. As the director of that office before becoming CAO, the county executive reviews all the budgets. Again, the biggest piece of our budget is the Montgomery County Public Schools, and the school board doesn't have to submit their budget to us into the middle of February. So that means we have weeks to make decisions about more than 50% of our budget, but they are very collaborative. We have been working with the school board. We have been working with Dr. Taylor as the superintendent to get information all along. Carla Silvestri, as the board president last year, established a working relationship with the new superintendent with the county executive, and that's been very effective. So thank you very much, Carla, for taking on that leadership role. And again, then it goes into public hearings and the council adoption the Thursday before Memorial Day. I will get into a lot of education issues, but this, of course, is a budget that covers all issues for the county government. This county executive has been focused on affordable housing, and as you can see with the chart, submitting records amount of support to both produce and preserve affordable housing in our community. There is obviously an affordability crisis. It's hard to pay for rent in our community, and he has been focused on making sure that we build affordable in many cases, deeply affordable housing across the county so we can have a range of housing opportunities for all people in Montgomery County. We operate this amazing Department of Health and Human Services. We are the only county in the state that operates our own Department of Health and Human Services. We have for several decades. As a result of that, we have control over the programs that we operate and offer to our community. We can make decisions using our own money as to who we want to serve. So we have had more flexibility regardless of who is in control in the White House or in Annapolis. We are able to make decisions about who we're going to support and help within our community, which has given us a free range of activity, recognizing the diversity of our community. But during this time that Mark Elrich has been county executive, we have expanded access through the Montgomery Cares program and the Care for Kids to long-term health insurance, regardless of people's, for example, immigration status. We have expanded school health services to include more counseling services across all of our high schools and expanding health centers in our elementary and middle schools. We have greatly expanded support for people at risk of or experiencing homelessness. We've opened new shelters. We've tried very hard to deal with the growing amount of homelessness. And at this moment in time, when we have watched the federal government waffle back and forth because of the shutdown on food stamps, SNAP funding, we kept up a system of supports for food security in our county. The FY26 budget already has $23.5 million for a variety of food programs to help food pantries, Manna Food Bank, to help with farm-to-table programs. So we have an extensive amount of assistance to people for food security already. The County Council last week talked about expanding that by another I think $3.5 million in food. So we already had a unique and greatly broad system of supports in our community ready for events like what has occurred. In public safety, we have expanded our fire and rescue service, especially through emergency medical services. The Fire and Rescue Service obviously puts out fires, but it spends a lot more time treating people in medical emergencies. We've extended and expanded the ways that we can get to people very quickly in a medical emergency. We've invested in police recruitment and retention to train the best police officers and to deal with our police shortage. We have launched a drone as first responder program in Bethesda, Silver Spring, White Oak, Germantown, Gaithersburg. We're able to get drones out to respond to emergencies quickly to see what's happening and often to let our police officers know they are going into a different situation than what the 911 call has found. And we've been able to make sure and clear calls where maybe someone has called and said, I see someone acting erratically, they're carrying a gun. The police officer is dispatched, and you can imagine if you're a police officer going to a situation where someone's told you someone's acting erratically with a gun, you might be walking into the situation in one way, but the drone gets there and determines it's a cell phone. And so now you might be responding in a very different way, both the speed with which you're driving and how you enter the situation. So we found it's a great way to diffuse situations with the police department and our community. In transportation, we have made all of our ride-on buses fare-free so people can ride anywhere in the county, whether that's on Flash, on Ride-On Flex, on our Ride-On Extra service, or on all general ride-on buses. We are developing bus rapid transit. Again, the Flash system, right now it's operating from Silver Spring to Burtonsville. That will expand to Columbia. We are working on a connection from the Wheaton Metro Station to Montgomery College, right here in Rockville, to connect the two ends of the Red Line on bus rapid transit along primarily Beers Mill Road. More obviously, then the next segment will be improvements on 355, ideally from Clarksburg to Friendship Heights, but obviously we're going to have to attempt that in smaller pieces in order to afford it. Now on to public schools. As you may know, Mark Elrich spent most of his career as a public school teacher. He was a math teacher. So, and he worked at the elementary school level. We have a history of supporting the Montgomery County Public Schools for generations in this county. But as you can see, in the Great Recession, we saw actual cuts in the per pupil spending that went into the public schools at the depth of our recession. And so the county executive has worked diligently. This line is when he came into office of county executive to try to get our spending back to where it was on a per pupil basis adjusted for inflation. So obviously from 2008-10 to today, we saw an uptick in the number of students, but we also saw an uptick in inflation. And so if we were spending at the per pupil peak in county dollars from FY10, which was $16,806, we've been able to get it up over the last 7 years to $14,624. I think that number would be slightly, in fact, higher with the new enrollment numbers that have come out for the current year, since enrollment actually went down below projections when this chart was made. So we have tried to catch back up to make sure we are spending, adjusted for inflation, the same amount of money that we were more than, at this point, 15 years ago. So these are historic increases, and in fact, last year, it was the largest ever single year increase, and over the last 3 years, we have added, last year we added $210 million in new county funds, just county funds. There were additional state dollars that came in to make up part of that. So again, reminding everyone, the school board has to make the decision about the funding request that is put into the to the county executive. The superintendent's proposed the CIP. The superintendent will propose an operating budget over the next few weeks, I think in the middle of December, early December, and then the school board has to make the decisions about the capital budget and the operating budget that is then sent to the county executive. Under Maryland state law, he doesn't get involved in which school gets built. He doesn't move things around. He has to function in the big dollar amount levels. And even the county council really gives just the appropriation, and it's the Board of Education that has to make the determination both in the request and then in adopting the final budget in June after the county council as to what exactly they're going to spend the money on, how many teachers they're going to hire, what are the pay increases, what are the schools they're going to build. Those all by state and county law are left to the elected officials who make up the school board, which is why it's so important that Carla Silvestri, a school board member, is here to hear the presentation. There are 8 board members, 7 elected countywide, and 1 representing the students, so a current high school senior. So a little bit about where we are in FY26. This is the current year operating budget for the county. And as you can see, we spend of our own dollars, general fund revenues, that means these are our own tax dollars. We spend a majority of our budget, 54% on education, 51% just to the Montgomery County Public Schools. So that is our #1 priority, whether you're county executive, county council, generations of elected official. We put in more money into our school system than any other item. So the next biggest chunk of money goes to public safety, police, fire, corrections. We put in another 10% of our budget into debt service, paying back the money we've borrowed to build things, the capital budget. So we have to provide money for our employees for their pensions, and then the retiree health care for not just the Montgomery County government employees, but also for MCPS retirees, Montgomery College retirees. So we have separate accounts where we're putting money in for OPEB. I know there's one person in this audience who can tell me what OPEB stands for at least, but there are, I'm sure, multiple other post-employment benefits, primarily retiree health care. And then the rest of the budget. That is Health and Human Services. That is libraries, recreation. So really, our priority, education, public safety, and paying off our debt. This year will pose some very interesting challenges for the county executive as he assembles the budget. Obviously, more people need help in our community. We are at a very interesting moment. I know I was talking to some people at the beginning of the session, and people are like, "Oh, the county, aren't you? You know, we've got a crisis, we've got a problem." Actually, our revenues during the current fiscal year have met every one of our estimates. People have been paying their property taxes. The income tax is even outperforming our estimates that we redid just in April. So the same thing is carrying over to the state government. I say that with a huge asterisk. The last few weeks have thrown everything off. Obviously, federal law says federal employees are supposed to be paid back for a shutdown. I assume that will occur. If that doesn't occur, we'll have to adjust. Roughly 10% of our county residents work for the federal government. So obviously, if they miss a month of pay and they don't get that money, that will have a ripple effect onto our revenues and in other businesses. But I would remind people, we have some of the wealthiest people in the world who live in Montgomery County. So we have people who are doing better than ever. The federal government, through the one big bill, put in tens of millions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars into defense and security. While we are very proud of the life sciences in Montgomery County, we should not overlook what is often called the death sciences that make up the Washington area through the Pentagon. That is tens of billions of additional money that are flowing through businesses that are located in our community. There's enormous sums of money being spent on K Street lobbying firms, with many of those people live in Montgomery County. So I'm just trying to say, while there's a high profile for people who are having difficulty right now, there are other parts of our robust local economy that are doing better than ever. So our revenues are a mix. Obviously, as inflation grows, that can make it harder to afford the same things that are in our budget. Last year, the county executive proposed a tax increase to fund our public schools. The county council decided not to do it and made some one-time only shifts in funding that will have to be made up in FY27. So obviously, if the council had gone along with the county executive tax plans, we would be in an even stronger position. So, and we're constantly monitoring what's happening at the federal and state level to see what funding that we receive from them, how that might be impacted by the changes that are happening on Capitol Hill and in Annapolis. It is important to note that federal aid and state aid are both distributed to states and to counties, and to school systems, inverse the local wealth. So wealthier jurisdictions get less money proportionally. So while we get roughly $300 million split between the school system and the county government from the federal government, that is a relatively small amount of our budget. That's not 5% of our budget from the federal government. So if half of that went away, that still is a relatively doable thing to adjust for. Other counties around us have a much greater exposure to reductions in direct federal and state aid to their budgets. So this chart, I feel every time I have to do this presentation, I feel like this chart is out of date, because every day something different is happening. We know there have been job losses at the federal level that have impacted, and contractors that have impacted our county. Even though these are big numbers, they often reflect 1%, 2%, 3% of the number of people who are employed in the county. For anyone in that situation, I do not mean to minimize the impact that it's having on you or your families. I'm just trying to give you the context within the broader economy of our county and our tax base to put it into perspective. We will see what else happens with the federal government. We will see what happens with budgets that are actually passed and then how they are actually implemented by the Trump administration. I know Senator Van Hollen, Senator Alsobrooks have talked about all of the money, for example, all of the money that they've been able to get in the initial rounds of budget talks for example, the National Institutes of Health, reversing many of the cuts that the Trump administration has tried to do. Hopefully they will make it through the process. But there's that give and take that is happening on Capitol Hill still every day. So obviously we know, I talked a little bit about federal aid and the amount of federal spending that happens in our community. But clearly one thing that is impacting the lives of so many people in our community, businesses in our community, is the efforts of the Trump administration around immigration enforcement and deportation. We struggle every day to figure out what is happening, who's being impacted, and what the implications are for the community. So that is also throwing some of our numbers off. So going back to inflation, you saw me talk about the operating budget. This is the impact on the county's capital budget and, of course, also on school construction. We have maintained the same level, pretty much the same level of funding for our capital budget over the last 17 years, moving between a little bit over 300 to a little bit below 300. In the last several years, $280 million. We did this in order to get our debt back down to a level that the bond rating agencies wanted us to hit for our guidelines. We've been able to do that. Just last week, we were reaffirmed by all three rating agencies with the best rating a government can have, AAA. So we are a AAA jurisdiction. Once again, yay, Carla is applauding. So we have been a AAA jurisdiction with Moody's since I was in diapers. So even before I started kindergarten in the Montgomery County Public Schools, we were a AAA bond-rated community, and we have remained that way for almost 55 years. So, this blue line on top shows this is what if we wanted to keep pace with inflation within construction, this is what we should have been spending. So even though we've been spending the same amount of money every year, we know the cost of goods, lumber, steel, concrete, all the things we use to build buildings and to pave roads has grown more expensive. So if we wanted to be doing the same thing, if we wanted spending $300 million in 2009, we should be spending almost $560 million in 2026. So that loss in buying power has meant we are doing less. Even though we are spending the same amount of money, it is buying us less year after year. And the county executive has been trying to get the county council to recognize that and move forward, to recognize the rising costs that are impacting our operating budget. We picked out a few things, capital budget. We picked out a few things that we spend money on through the capital budget. Buying a bus more than doubled. Every square foot of new school construction over a decade has more than doubled. The cost of a fire engine has almost doubled. The cost of paving a road has gone up by 65, 70%. So you can see to do the same thing has cost that much more, and we're still using the same amount of money. So if we were to spend our whole budget on fire engines, we'd only be able to buy roughly half of the vehicles that we did just a few years ago. So when it comes to the challenge that the county executive and the county council face with the superintendent's request for capital funding for the school system, you can see this is how much more. The blue is not his total request. The blue reflects his additional amount of money over the current year budget. So we are already putting hundreds of millions of dollars into the school system for construction, But for FY27, for example, he has asked for an additional $78,801,000 for school construction. So far, the county council has only upped our debt affordability guidelines to $300 million. So just from the starting point, the county executive would have to say no to everybody else and just fund roughly a quarter of the superintendent's request. Now, the good news is we have been so disciplined as a community for so long, we have excess capacity. In fact, the county executive thought he was very prudent by asking the county council to up our annual general obligation bonds. We have more in the capital budget than just general obligation bonds, but he had requested the council set a guideline of $340 million a year, so a $60 million increase instead of a $20 million increase. So far, the council has only said 20. Now, the nice part is the county executive doesn't have to listen to this. He can submit a capital budget that goes beyond $300 million. It just requires more council members to vote for it in order to exceed that guideline. But as you can see, this additional $20 million is not enough just to meet, it doesn't come close to meeting the needs of the school system. So that's why he will be arguing and talking about why we have to do more in the capital budget. And of course, he hopes that when his budget comes out, when the school board puts it out, the school board members will be pounding on the desk in the county council saying, we need this higher level. That all of you will be pounding on the desk of the council members saying, we need this higher level. We can afford it. We've been disciplined in doing it. That's in building up our capacity. It is time to spend it. And in fact, this might be the perfect time to go out and actually build things, because there might be good deals to be had in the construction market if other construction is not occurring, even though the price of the inputs have been going up. So we hear this frequently. How does Montgomery County compare? And oh my God, you all are a high tax jurisdiction. So we actually have the lowest property taxes in the Washington region. For businesses, no question. For residents, we're only higher than the District of Columbia. So what makes Maryland different than Virginia is Maryland has a local income tax. Maryland is the only state in the country that not just allows local governments to have an income tax, actually mandates each county government to have an income tax. But unlike in Virginia, where the counties get a share of the sales tax directly, so in Fairfax County, for example, they have a 6% sales tax, 1.7 cents goes to the county government, 4.3 goes through Richmond. In Maryland, our 6 cent sales tax goes entirely to the state government. All business taxes go to the state government. In Northern Virginia, the counties all have business taxes that bring in more money for their revenues. And they have the ability to set higher property taxes by the class of property. So if you see in Fairfax County right here, their base property tax rate is $1.15. But for commercial properties, they have an additional 12.5 cent tax rate for all commercial property tax across Fairfax County. And they have a variety of special taxing districts that add 20 or more cents to commercial property. So if you've wondered, why has Fairfax County, how is Virginia built, like expanded the Beltway and built the Silver Line going out to Dulles Airport? Because they have put on all sorts of additional business taxes to fund the transportation improvements, which are what? Good for business and help spur on other commercial growth. And so as a result, in Fairfax County, in Tysons, where the tax differential between Bethesda and Tysons, and in this example where we're showing Reston, so if you have an apartment building, a rental apartment building, an office building, a shopping center in Reston, you're paying $1.48, almost $1.49, whereas In Bethesda, you would be paying, or anywhere in Montgomery County, you'd be paying $1.02. That differential, that nearly more than 45-cent differential gives them the ability to build transportation improvements and relieves their capital budget from having to support both transportation and schools. So it gives them greater flexibility for infrastructure that we do not have in Montgomery County or Maryland as a result of state law. And then the District of Columbia has a special case because the district has complete control over their budget when Congress doesn't meddle. They have a much lower residential property tax rate, but for buildings valued at more than $10 million, so a shopping center, an office building downtown, they charge almost $1 more for a property tax. So that means they have more robust funding in order to do some of the transportation improvements. And for those of us who've lived here in a long time, we have seen transportation investments in Virginia and in the District of Columbia and seen how they are outpacing us on one of the foundational sets of projects that help build the economy and the tax base. Which is why the county executive has been pointing out that Maryland has a tax system built in the 1960s, formulated in the 1960s, when we were a residential suburban community, when the state and the federal government was investing money in the highways like 270 in the Beltway. That doesn't work any longer. And in fact, the way we have things set up in Maryland, most of our roads are the responsibility of county governments. We maintain 5,400 miles of roads in Montgomery County. Fairfax County maintains 10 miles because the state of Virginia does all roads in Virginia. There are no local roads except for an occasional road here or there. So that means we have to support repaving, filling potholes, clearing debris, clearing snow, building new roads, widening roads for everything other than a road that has a 2 or 3 digit number on it. So if you're driving on the Beltway, that's a state road. If you're driving on 355, that's a state road. But if you're driving on Randolph Road, that is a county road, for example. Most of our roads, again, in the county obligation, and we have to pay. So with that, I have rushed through as quickly as ever. I think my OMB colleagues are going to be like, oh my God, he set a new speed record to get through, because really this is about you standing up and sharing your ideas and comments. So we will now go to questions. We have microphones. Mark Roper playing the role of Phil Donahue, Oprah Winfrey, right there.
Yes, but unlike Phil Donahue, I won't roam through the audience. So to be fair to everyone, we're going to ask everyone to form a line behind me, so that way we can come to everyone first come, first serve. Absolutely.
I'm ready.
I will also hold the mic. My job is to hold the mic. We do ask that you keep your questions to about a minute, in fairness to everyone in the room, so that we have enough time to get to everyone who has a question.
Thank you.
So, and if I can also, if you need me to go back to a specific slide, just let me know. I'll move it back. And you are being filmed by the camera over there.
Okay, thank you.
Let me
I'm
move
just
over
relaxing.
here so that
So good evening, everyone. My name is Kenya Reynoso. I'm the owner. I'm director of Kenya's Family Child Care in Clarksburg. So my question is, what is your solution to our child care crisis now? Because I hear you talking about a lot Montgomery County Public School with my kids, my own kids are. But what is the solution for 0 to 5? Thank you.
that is a huge question. And one, you know, the county executive has cared about from the very, very beginning. Started the first early care and education initiative. We've tried to put money in to supplant what the state is doing. The blueprint for Maryland's future, which is the great education reform bill, law in the state, does provide more access to income eligible 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. Of course, I think there's universal pre-K. So we're trying to do a lot. It has not been enough. Obviously, there is the huge cost. As a parent, I know the cost. Unfortunately, I have a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old, so it's been a while since I paid for childcare, but it was a lot then. It was a struggle then, and that number has only grown. So we put in money to help centers with capital costs. We put in money to help with training. We put in money to help with tuition assistance, as does the state. So if you have more specific issues, we've got a number of our subject matter experts. Louisa it looks like you know Louisa. And of course, Lori Garibay Aquino, who's right there. That's part of her portfolio as well. So please do also hit them for specifics or ideas, or make sure, if nothing else, we know how to contact you to keep you up to date with what is happening on issues that you might want to be involved in with the county. Thank you.
Mr. Madalena, next year I'll be going to Whitman for high school. I'm here tonight on behalf of my family and my neighbors because my older sister is at tech rehearsals for the Whitman Autumn Play. When my family moved to Westbard in 2021, my parents told me that even though it was a cut-through road with a double yellow line, the county's master plan said that in a couple of years it would be converted into a cul-de-sac, and me and my brother and the other kids in the neighborhood would be able to play street hockey and street football at the end of the court. But until the county enacts the master plan and closes the intersection, the most aggressive drivers will continue to use our block to go around the traffic signal on their way to the shopping center. It has been 2 years since the road construction was completed. Now there are 32 new townhouses under construction on our block. Our block is getting all the negatives from the new construction and density in the master plan, but we are still waiting for the traffic protection we're supposed to get under the master plan. In March of this year, Michael Paler emailed our neighborhood to tell us that a decision had been reached to follow the master plan and close the road, and he explained that it would take some time to obtain permits from the State Highway Administration, but that the process was officially underway and then construction would begin in early 2026. We celebrated. Since then, the project has been put on hold and no one in the county government is communicating with us. You said last week at the Spanish Language Forum that an announcement would be coming out very soon about our road closure, but it has been over a week and still nothing but silence. My question is this: are you going to follow through with the county's master plan for our block? The executive's term lasts for only 1 more year, and no one knows if the next executive will respect the master plans or not.
So thank you for your question. The one thing that has changed from last week to this week is the county executive who was in Asia on a trade mission is back. So we will be moving something very shortly. It should probably come as no surprise to many people in this room that we are a large organization. We try to be nimble, but we are also a bureaucracy. And there are rules that we have to follow because there are people watching what we're doing and will challenge us for things where we don't follow the process that is laid out for us, whether in state or county law. So, but nothing has changed with the commitment to the master plan, and we will still be coming out with something soon. And maybe, when does your sister's play start, and what is it?
I'm not 100% sure.
Because I was going to, I don't know, maybe it'll be in time for the show. But anyway, thank you for the question, and I know that is a concern we are hearing from many of your neighbors.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rich Biajitsky, member of Strong Towns DMV, resident of downtown Bethesda, and soon-to-be father. With the cost of housing driving families out of Montgomery County, we need to encourage development of more housing so families can afford to live here. To help achieve the goals of Thrive Montgomery 2050 of compact development along major corridors, the county should consider implementing a land value tax shift, charging lower rates for assessed building value and higher rates for assessed land value. This would encourage development of the housing we need to lower costs for families while keeping the overall tax burden the same. Will the county work with the state to allow for implementation of this tax shift to spur development? So,
while I cannot give you an absolute yes to your specific question, we are working each and every year in coalition with the county council, with our state legislators, and with the Maryland Association of Counties to come up with broader authority for the way that counties can assess taxes to try to achieve some of the goals that everyone wants, notably Governor Moore, who is talking about affordability all the time. So I'm sure that will be part of the conversation. I just don't want to say absolutely yes to Mark Elrich saying yes on that. But this has been one of the ideas that we have talked about as a way to spur affordable housing construction and development in the county. But I wanted to come back to this slide just to remind people of the significant progress that the county has made during this county executive's term to put in additional money, record amount of money into the production and preservation of affordable housing. He gets it. He knows that we need to have deeply affordable housing and housing for families in apartments. That it's one thing to have a studio apartment that is affordable, but you need 2- and 3-bedroom apartments that are affordable in all parts of the county so that people have access to jobs, great services, good schools, and that should be all over the county and not just in specific communities. Thank you. I also want to point out that Debbie Spielberg, who is Special Assistant to the County Executive, has joined us in the room too.
Hi, how are you? My name is Stacy Gans-Khan. I'm a lifelong resident of Montgomery County. I'm a former administrator in the school system, former PTSA president at all levels, and I have 3 kids that went through the system. I'm an educational advocate and consultant, and my question today has to do with special ed. So I'm going to go ahead and just read from here. Special education in Montgomery County Public Schools is in crisis. While there are many areas that need long-term attention, an immediate and impactful way to ensure high-quality services for our students with disabilities is to provide staff with the training they urgently need. Compliance issues are not simply the result of neglect. They occur because our special education staff, although dedicated and well-intentioned, have not been given the proper training on how to write and implement legally compliant IEPs. Teachers in the classroom and principals overseeing these programs must understand special education policy and law. Without this essential training, the system will continue to find itself in court against parents paying for compensatory services or losing state complaints. Even when MCPS prevails in court, the legal costs are enormous. The reality is this: we can either invest proactively in training our staff now, or we will continue to spend far more on violations, settlements, and litigation later. I urge you to ensure that the budget allocates funding for this critical training. It is the most effective way to reduce compliance issues, restore trust with families, and most importantly, guarantee that students with disabilities receive the excellent education they both deserve and are entitled to under law. So I ask you, what are we doing about special education in Montgomery County?
So thank you very much for your question. I do know that last year, and Carla is my witness here, Debbie is my witness here, that when the superintendent came in last year with a very large increase for funding, including primarily for special education, the county executive didn't blink. The county executive didn't say, prove it to me, I want to see it. And the county executive was like, you know what, you're absolutely right. I'm so glad someone has come forward and started to tell this story, because I saw it as a teacher, I've seen it as a parent, as a grandparent, I hear it as an elected official. So he was there, he proposed the money to fully fund the superintendent's requests around special education, and has supported the school system in that effort. He even proposed a tax increase in order to make sure we did it. Now, the council was able to come up with an approach that got the school system much of the money that they wanted, but without a tax increase, and I don't know if it'll be a struggle this year, but the county executive has I think has heard this issue over and over and is hopeful that, and we'll see what the school board sends over to the county executive as a request for funding this. Not only is Carla here, but David Stein, who's the president of the Montgomery County Education Association, is also here. You may know David, but you might want to talk to them as well to connect, to hear what is happening, and what, at least from Carla, what's the board's current perspective on it. So thank you. And I forgot to say, when you talked about lifelong, I started kindergarten at Burnt Mills, I went to Stonegate, then went to White Oak Junior High School. I'm old enough, there was a junior high school, and then my parents sent me to a Catholic high school, so I didn't go to Springbrook. My kids went to Rock Creek Forest, Westland, and BCC. So I've seen it as a perspective of a student, a parent, and in a variety of roles within the community in and around public service. Carla and I were parents together through the program. Our kids went almost all through the Spanish immersion program together.
Hi, good evening. I'm Monica Ortiz, a county resident with a particular and personal interest in early childhood education. I saw that recently the county executive had made available another $10 million to focus on early childhood services, both in early care settings as well as educational settings. And I'm wondering if there is a more targeted approach intended for future, special funding or annual funding to help close the achievement gap. Because we know that historically speaking, a good number of children in Montgomery County come from homes with parents with high levels of education, as well as disposable income to provide high-quality child care settings, tutoring, and after-school enrichment programs. But the continued achievement gap really is something that starts in early childhood. So if there's an intentional effort or focus to do any more prevention in terms of services, specifically on early childhood education, not general child care, which is a support in other ways for working families.
So I don't know if one of my colleagues over here wants to give you a more specific answer than your detailed question deserves than what I would be able to throw out. There are microphones right there if Lori Garibay Aquino, who is the head of our Division of Children, Youth, and Families within our Department of Health and Human Services.
All right. Thank you for that. So within the Early Childhood Services team at HHS, we've conducted a number of multiple studies. We've had 2 that have been published, I think, so far over the course of the year. The first one really provided insight into the gaps that we see across the county. And as a result of that, we've worked closely with a lot of our community partners to come up with a plan of action to address those gaps. So in terms of the availability of providers in different parts of the county and also the quality of those services offered. Another study that was just published, I think last week or this week, talked about kind of the income inequities that we see among child care providers as well. So we are working very closely with our partners, with the county executive's office, to take those findings and come up with an action plan to address that.
Sorry, and if I could just go one more layer, is there anything distinctly focusing on school readiness and early childhood education? So I know that there's an effort to support working parents with the fees associated with putting their children in child care, but either supporting training for child care providers or just making more Head Start and pre-K slots available.
Yes, so
especially to the most at-risk and low-income special ed families.
Yeah, definitely. So this year, the team was awarded the Head Start and Early Head Start grant at the federal level. Part of that money is going back into communities for our early child care providers, and the focus is really on training, making sure that we're closing some of those gaps that we see in school readiness. So those are things that, we would work with the providers to help kind of track and track those outcomes as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And make sure if they don't have your contact information, or Lori might have an advisory board that you can be a member of. Lori is a Silver Spring resident and an Oakland Terrace parent, too.
Hello, Josie Caballero, resident in Montgomery County, and I have a clarifying question. So the slide that you said we're paying 51% of MCPS, Was that including the capital improvement plan?
So this is just the operating budget.
That's just the
So
operating
this is
budget.
just the FY26 operating budget and
Okay.
how much of our just our tax revenues, so not state aid, not federal aid, how much of our own money we put into the school system, which is 51%.
Okay, great. So my question is, we're about to go into the capital improvement plan, and I've talked to many teachers that are having their schools shut down, and it's a very, very terrible situation when that's happening. And we know in the last budget, we saw teachers fighting their hearts out to get the special education, to get the raises that they deserve, to hit their operational budget. Now we also have the capital improvement plans that we have to do at the same time. So the knockout, drag-out fight that really closed at the final bell to get that money, are we prepared for that same fight for not only to maintain the teachers' needs in the school's operating budget, but also the fact that we have to do this capital improvement plan for our crumbling school infrastructure? Is there a plan for that, or is it just like we're just going to go for it? Like, what's your thoughts?
So obviously, the superintendent has laid out a plan, submitted it to the school board. The school board has to take their vote first, as the elected officials empowered to do this. So they have to take their vote and then provide a final set of requests to the county executive to figure out. He is hearing from people all over the community who are concerned with many aspects of the plan the superintendent has laid out, especially the ones dealing with unexpected closures or uses of schools and moving things around. So he is hearing from that. I do have to caution the way that state and county law is structured. The county executive doesn't get involved in the move this money to that. It's really, he's got to put in an amount of money based upon the request of the school board, and then the school board, once it goes through the executive and the council, then has the final determination as to what they move forward with. Ideally, they will do that through the public process and honor the commitments they've made. I would point out to everybody that, one of the interesting and I think most surprising moments of all of the presentation slides the superintendent put out, and I'm sorry I don't have it in my slide deck, was the current and future enrollment of the school system through my entire lifetime. The school system has been, since for the last 40 years, the school system has been on an upward trajectory of enrollment, going from 90,000 to 165,000. We will now, over the last few years and continued for the remainder of the projection, his projection is a loss of 16,000 students. That is almost a 10% reduction in enrollment that will face, there will be a facility question that comes up over if we have a facility, if we have a physical plant built for 165,000 children and we only have 149,000, what is the most efficient way to organize our physical plant? So there will be hard decisions to be made now, just like the county has faced in periods of declining enrollment. So what?
Okay, all right, thank you.
But that's why I know board member Silvestri is not here, but the board wants to hear from people.
Great.
And you need, anyone who's interested in this on whatever sides, they need to let board members know, because they are the elected officials who have to make the first set of decisions about all of these projects.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rosie Saab, an educator in NCPS and a 35-year resident of Montgomery County. I want to say I support my community members in their calls for special education, capital improvement, early childhood. We need all that. I actually have a question for the county executive about removing a line item from his budget, so not spending money. And it is $44,000 or $45,000 that he's approved every year for the Maryland Israel Development Center. This is a program that the state already funds, and we know Israel's already received $18 billion plus from the federal government, and I just don't see why he needs to keep giving even that little bit of money to that, to grow Israeli businesses, which then support an apartheid state. I was around in the 80s. Montgomery County did sanctions and boycotted South Africa when they were declared an apartheid state, and I feel like that would be the moral and ethical thing to do, is just strike that $45,000 line item. So if you could share that. And
Absolutely. And, you know, he has heard that repeatedly at the budget forums, and I know that will be part of the consideration as he makes his final budget determinations
Right. Thank
for
you.
March 17th.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Joanna Waisner. I am from Damascus. I have a second grader who goes to school in Damascus, and I am taking up what previous decades of moms have done before me, trying to get Damascus a new high school. It was built in 1950, I'm sorry. It's 75 years old. We've been in the CIP many, many times. We keep getting delayed. MCPS is telling us county budget restraints is delaying it. You're telling us it's MCPS making these decisions, what schools get built, what the priorities are. I don't want to waste my time moving forward with something that many people before me have tried and failed, and just gotten plain frustrated with and stopped trying. So can you please tell me how I can not waste my time and how we can get a new school built for Damascus in the next CIP budget?
Sure. Well, multiple things. Not an easy question. The first step is the school board must adopt the capital improvement plan with Damascus High School in it. So that's got to be there. And I forget where it is with the superintendent's.
We're the top high school in the CIP right now.
And I don't know where it fits within the 6 years. That's why what year it fits in within the 6 years. But
supposed to be completed by 2031.
Okay.
Is his recommendation.
So you got to make sure that stays in the budget through the school board. So advocacy
Yep.
with the school board.
I wish she was still in here.
Yes. So, but again, they're not easy. I know they have a work session tomorrow on this issue, and several scheduled over the next several days. You can get all that on the Board of Education website, which probably you know about, but maybe not everyone does, that the full agenda for all the board meetings is there, and there are a bunch of capital meetings coming up. So the county executive would ask that you and your friends, neighbors, fellow parents advocate before, demand the county council to increase the debt limit so that we can afford these projects. He proposed in a very prudent manner $340 million of capacity, which I showed you on that one chart, which would only get a small portion of what we could go higher. It would demand a certain degree of political risk to do that, because every dollar you borrow, a good government repays. We've always been a good government about that. And so, I think the question people will be facing is now the time to increase borrowing, because then you got to pay it back. And what's going to happen with our tax revenues moving forward? The county executive, I think many of us as homeowners, as parents, have seen that generations of Montgomery County, good schools result in good development, good housing values. It's a virtuous cycle, and we need to keep that up, because obviously if we get into that other cycle, as we've seen communities all over the country, when you go in that other cycle, the numbers, the values, interest in the community, job growth, all go downhill. So.
And what is the county education committee's role in the CIP? Because I know there's the county education committee, their council members, they're part of the county council, they're all voting on this. But at what point does the county education committee look at a community like Damascus, who doesn't have a mayor, who doesn't have local city officials representing us? We literally just have parent volunteers to represent us to the Board of Education, to the county council, trying to get our kids a safe, modern school facility. So at what point does the county education committee say enough's enough? Like, okay, we hear all the buzz that's going on from this school over here and all the support they have from their elected officials, but Damascus doesn't have that. They need it.
So by the education committee, I just want to be clear, the council education committee, not the Board of Education.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So the council education committee, which is Councilmember Will Jawando.
Yes.
Councilmember Kristen Mink, and currently Councilmember Gabe
Albornoz,
Albornoz, who has already announced that he will be departing the county council. So I don't know who it will be come these decisions in the spring and in the winter and spring. But yes, they get the first crack at it. They get to determine the first set of recommendations that then go to the full council. I do want to remind everybody, well, you said there's no mayor in Damascus. The vast majority of Montgomery County residents live in unincorporated areas. And so even in the handful of places where there are incorporated areas, when it comes to the school system, the mayor of Gaithersburg, the mayor of Rockville, the two largest municipal governments, they might get first on the agenda out of courtesy, but those cities don't put money in. It doesn't buy them an earlier place in line, for example. Every resident of Montgomery County has the same representation on the county council. You have a district member, in your case, Don Lutke, and you have 4 at-large council members. So every resident of Montgomery County is represented by 5 members of the county council. So all five of those people should be representing you to the fullest extent, and not, trying to say like, oh, well, we live in Silver Springs, so therefore, there's supposed to be that equal representation, and that's the thought behind the structure of the county council. So yes, you need to advocate there, but you also need to advocate, and I would pay special attention also to the government operations committee, because they get the first crack at some of the larger fiscal policy questions like the debt capacity, and that of course is chaired by the current council president, Kate Stewart. That the presidency rotates. There'll be a new council president come December, but Kate Stewart, Andrew Friedson, and Sidney Katz are the 3 members. So it makes complete sense also to work on them as to why it's so important that there be adequate resources in the CIP. And 280, 300 simply is not enough to keep all corners of the county and the schools that have been promised for so long on track.
Okay.
And at this critical time. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Hi, Rich.
You again.
I know, me again. I'm so sorry, but I'm wearing a different hat this time. I welcomed you with my MCC PTA hat on, but my day job is Executive Director of Nonprofit Montgomery, and I would be remiss.
I hadn't heard.
I would be remiss, even though tonight's focus is education, not to point out highlight the needs of nonprofits, many of whom are in the room tonight, because nonprofits do a whole lot here in the county to support children and families, both during the school day with partnerships with DHHS, also outside of the school day. Nonprofit support for children doesn't end when the school bell rings. So I hope the county executive's budget continues his tradition of support for county nonprofits and community partners. We need inflationary adjustments. We need increased grant funding, a commitment to a rapid response to the challenges facing the county and the nonprofit sector. 70% of county nonprofits have seen a decrease in individual giving in the last 6 months, and 2/3 have seen a decrease in corporate donations. It's a really hard time to run a nonprofit business. And to keep up with the needs, the sector needs increased investment. I hope we can count on the county executive for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know many of those we are hearing from many of your colleagues on the same issues. And even today, Debbie Spielberg in the office was talking about how do we get people focused on giving? How do we get the word out about giving? And how do we make sure that many people in our county who are doing exceedingly well at this moment in time know about the challenges that face people in our community at this time and what role they can play to help out.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Larry Bram. I'm with Easter Seals, and it's going to go back to early childhood again. A couple weeks ago, I heard the superintendent say 5 is way too late. If you come into our school behind, you never catch up. So this is really for MCPS to hear. So much of the pre-K is in the school system. Well, that takes away from the community providers. That's where all the money is, frankly. You lose money on infants and toddlers because of the ratio. So if they really wanted to improve the whole system, including infant toddlers, it'd be looking at getting more and more, as much as possible, pre-K into the community, because they're never going to do infant toddler work, but you're going to see more and more centers go out of business. So that would be my plea to MCPS. Don't build new centers. If there's ways to be innovative and transfer more into the community, that they should do that.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I thought I was in the room by myself. Greeting everybody. My name is Dorian Rogers. Pronouns he, him, his. I am a lifetime resident of Clarksburg, Maryland. Clarksburg graduate, Seaburg. I also work for an organization called Young People for Progress with our family and friends. I know we have friends with us with Jews United for Justice, but youth are just our future. There are now. And right now, particularly when it comes to restorative approaches, with the shift in, let's say, the code of conduct. I know as a alum myself, sometimes we're often told as students, and this is something that I was reminded by a student, that we're told to show our work, right, as students, right? And even though I'm old, right, I'm 25. But if students are told to show their work, if teachers are told to show their work, and if parents are told to look over the work of their students, then it's important that our administrators and it's important that our county leaders and our bureaucratic offices show their work, especially in using our tax dollars to advance our communities. And so my question, particularly when it comes to Montgomery County's operating budget, what are we doing to really get clarity about the structures of restorative approaches in our schools? I ask because oftentimes we're asking questions as to how restorative approaches happens from the teachers' classrooms to the offices throughout our schools, but we're often getting roadblocks when it pertains to clarity as to how those funds are used structurally through MCPS's line-by-line expenditures. And so my question from the county exec's perspective, what is being done to analyze MCPS's structures to implement restorative approaches, and most importantly, making sure that our funds are used to take care of our students, recognizing the already alarming numbers of suspensions in our schools?
So I know the county executive, I know at your age you'll probably want to sit down quickly, so, but I ask that you stand up for a little longer. The county executive cares about these issues. It has been something he's talked about, I think, from day one as county executive. There are, not to disappoint you, and I think he would share sometimes the same frustration you heard about, show your work, because, we often, the request that we get from the school system is often very high level. Big numbers, and we'll get this very dense book, but we'll be told here we just want 10 million for this, $100 million for that, and not we really don't get into, and state law in general does not give county governments the ability to get into that level of detail. So I would say now is the time to be advocating with the superintendent, because he's putting together his budget plan that will come out in the middle of December. So again, this is always building. If you want something, if you need something, if you and colleagues want something, you've got to be pounding on the superintendent right now to say, this is the change we want, the budget numbers, the initiatives we want in the budget. because it starts with them, and then you got to do the same thing then. It's not a simple process. You got to do the same thing with the school board to make sure whatever gets in or isn't in, and you want it added, that the school board hears your vision about what to go in, and then moving it along through the executive and the council. You have many allies through this process in order to do that. I would also, again, make sure maybe you're working with them. I mean, you talked about Jews United for Justice, but also the teachers, the Educators Association with the MCEA. I think it's important, if you don't already work with them, to reach out to them. And David, the president, is right there in the red jacket. Social studies teacher, right? Math, oh, even better, math teacher. So just like the county executive, sorry. I don't know how I got that wrong, but a fellow math teacher. And so to talk with them about what you can do to advocate for this, where they are in their own advocacy, and maybe there's a happy coalition to be formed to push the superintendent for whatever initiatives you're looking for, at least some funding for that.
So thank you.
No problem. Now you can sit down. And hopefully you'll put it all on TikTok.
Yeah. I'm 56 years old. No TikTok videos are coming from this question. So
well, you never know. There's a video right there. You could be going. You might already be going viral. I don't know.
This is true. My 17-year-old would be stunned.
Proud. She would be proud.
Oh, yeah. So my name's Amy Ackerberg, and I'm Ackerberg Hastings, and I'm a resident of the Twin Brook neighborhood of Rockville. And as a longtime PTA advocate, we really appreciate the generous funding and oversight that Montgomery County provides. And so I'll throw in a quick little plug for providing oversight on the development of the programs analysis that MCC PTA passed a resolution about this week. But my question is actually about we get important funding from the county directly as well as through the MCPS budget. And so specifically, I'd like to see an increase in linkages to learning funding so that the program could be expanded to more schools. We have a lot of Title I and community schools that desperately need these wraparound services, and there's not enough money there to serve them all. So that would be helpful, particularly at Twin Brook Elementary.
So thank you. And for people who don't know, Linkages to Learning is one of the programs where we provide services to students. I think behavioral health services for the most part at the elementary and middle school level. In Montgomery County, unlike in other places in the state, most other places, but these programs, school health services and a range of programs that fit within that, are part of our Department of Health and Human Services. So in Prince George's County, they would be part of the school system. For us, they're part of our HHS. So which is why when you said there's direct funding, it's important to note there's all this additional tens of millions, if not of dollars, that flow to services, to students through our Department of Health and Human Services. Of course, the director, Dr. James Bridgers, is right there, and I know James and Lori were furious in looking out for these things, and I know the county executive over the years, we have put money into expanding linkages and wellness centers. Wellness centers provide these services at the high school level, and of trying to expand those to as many high schools as possible. I think the overall promise is try to get into every high school. Not every high school is the same when it comes to an uninsured population and where you put in those services, but clearly we've been trying to add linkages to learning sites, school-based health centers to as many communities as possible. We've been aided with the blueprint formula at the state level because community schools have provided some additional money and supports that we can put in to support these sorts of services. So, but again, you might want to talk to Dr. Bridgers before you go. And with more than 80 boards, committees, and commissions across the county, there might be one that you are looking for added time, or maybe your teenager would like you to find added volunteer time out of the house, and that Dr. Bridgers could find something for you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janet Remsnyder. I am a longtime Montgomery County resident, born and raised here. I was born at the same hospital my children were born at, so Montgomery County is my home.
Would that be Holy Cross Hospital?
No, Shady Grove.
Wow, okay.
Um,
I say Holy Cross because has the largest number of births of any hospital in the state of Maryland.
Well, I defied the odds. But the reason I'm here tonight is I am a Damascus parent, which feels to me like the ultimate irony because I grew up in Olney, and Olney people thought of themselves as being better than Damascus people because they were the cow tippers and the rednecks and all of these things. But I think we can all realize that life is sometimes kind of funny, and we end up in situations and places where we wouldn't have necessarily placed ourselves. And I'm thankful for it. Because now I have a whole number of years of advocacy work that my community has given me, namely a high school that needs a renovation, obviously. So the question I have, based on your presentation, would be, you're saying there's this huge disparity between what the superintendent is asking and what is being offered. And with that, yes, they're perfect. Right there. With that disparity comes the presentation of reality versus that orange number is to me, we're living in the dark ages. So bigger picture, the question I want to know, based on that big circle, is let's say we show up in force at the county council and we're like, this has to happen, and they actually listen to us, which would be amazing. Let's say we get those gray numbers that our county desperately needs. And this is not a life of extravagance. This is providing this building, this room that we're sitting in here with an update that is updating schools that are 75 years old, things of that nature. And with that reality comes, does that pie, that big circle, does that get bigger? So are we talking about that circle is going to just start going out? Or the other reality is MCPS has been overlooked and underfunded, and does that percentage get larger? So I'm referring to this graph here as well as the bigger circle graph that you were just on before this.
Do you want me to go back to that one? Or?
Well, I'm just providing it for a reference
Yes.
for people in the room
Yes.
because I'm referring to two different things.
Yep.
But so currently you're saying 54% goes to education. So let's say we get the funding from the county council and they're like, yeah, let's do this. We have been living in the dark ages. Let's go. And so does education become 75% of the county budget, or does the county budget expand as a whole? So that's a very long-winded way of getting to a very simple answer.
So I'll keep it simple, yes. No, I'm joking. So, but before I go, I gotta thank the interpreters, because when you said cow tipping, that was the most dramatic gesture I've ever seen. So that's why it threw me. I was pointing to him because suddenly it was, yes, that was quite entertaining. So.
We don't cow tip anymore.
There are.
Yeah, we don't do that.
Having grown up in Silver Spring with a cow pasture right behind our house, I know all about cow tipping. So, and that cow pasture is now the Muslim Community Center. So very interesting of how things have changed.
Yeah.
So, you asked a simple question and it is a confusing answer. That donut chart that you saw, the way that if we were to get these orange bars much higher, or get them up to match the blue bars, the funding for that would primarily sit under debt service. So if you remember, as I was going through that chart, I was bringing up debt service up here. So, a chunk of this 10% of the budget is actually paying for the bonds to build schools. So if we did all of this, that wouldn't necessarily change this percentage because it's just elsewhere in the budget. So I'm just trying to level set expectations. Now, obviously, new schools could lead to both new staff to run the programs in the school. It can actually result in savings as more efficient schools spend less on air conditioning and heating and the other ongoing expenses. So yes, we could do this, and under our current forecasted growth, our goal is always to keep this number under 10%. Under forecasted growth, this number, the almost $4.6 billion, is forecasted to grow. So as that grows, that gives us capacity to add more and more money in debt service to build those buildings. And that's why the county executive said, as a starting point, he thought we should go from 280 to 340. We have argued that there is capacity to do even more. We may not be able to meet, without other revenue changes, the superintendent's current plan, but ideally we could do a lot more than that little $20 million that the county council has set aside, which is why when I was answering the questions of your neighbor and colleague, I was talking about the need to not just talk to the Board of Education and not just the Education Committee of the County Council, but also the Government Operations Committee. Because those three people, Councilmember Stewart, Councilmember Friedson, and Councilmember Katz, will play a very large role in making a recommendation to their colleagues as to what level of borrowing we can afford. And so they need to be on board as well. So you need those 6 people, and out of an 11 members, 6 is a majority. You need the 3 on the Education Committee, Councilmembers Dewando, Mink, and Albornoz, or someone will be a new person, and then Council Members Stewart, Friedson, and Katz. So, but we can do this. We can do this. We have flexibility. I might be killing some of the OMB staff that are sitting right behind you, who I've conveniently been trying not to make eye contact with during the meeting because it puts stress on the budget. Every dollar you borrow, you got to pay back with interest, and you're making an obligation for 20 years. But I think the county executive, lifelong educator, someone whose life path has been shaped by educational opportunity, understands that good schools, great teachers, great facilities is good for the economy. It's good for the tax base. It's essential for children and their life opportunities. So it's a virtuous cycle that we need to invest in. So it's a virtuous donut we need to invest in.
I guess this is last simple follow-up question. Is there any way?
You promise it's a simple follow-up
I do, I
question.
promise.
Okay.
Is there a way in some world where somebody sitting at a desk who's really good at math, because I'm not, could create what this pie would look like with the superintendent's recommendations so that we can understand the implications of what he is asking for?
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
So we have, I have tormented enough OMB. Oh my God. Louise has already got a chart that she's already got a donut chart there. Sure. Yes. Yes.
But the CIP donut
and tomorrow is actually National Donut Day. So
how that fits into this. Because I think it's a good advocacy perspective to have, because what we're asking for means this group or these people might not have. Yep. Or if what we're asking for from our county elected officials is that our debt service, that dark green area, goes from 10% to what he's asking for again, 25%. Or does that mean the MCPS blue gets larger? So that's my ask.
We can do that, and thank you for that suggestion, because obviously not only does the county executive have to make decisions about formulating the budget, as soon as he does, we have to go from formulation to advocacy. Because we've got to take the proposals that he's gone out to the public and said, this is what I want to do for all of you.
Yes.
And he has to work with you to then go advocate to the county council. This is what I want to do. This is what the school board wants and the superintendent and the community. This is how we can afford it. And this is what it's going to do to us in the future.
Right.
This is the cost that we are signing up for in order to do this so that everyone knows. You brought up transparency so that everyone knows this is what we're talking about. This is how we can afford it. But this is the deal we're all making because we are the ones that will be paying the bill for years to come for that borrowing. So yes, we can do that, and that's a great point, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
And literally tomorrow is one of 2 National Donut Days. So it's not the big one. Don't go to Krispy Kreme looking for free donuts or Dunkin' Donuts. That's the day in June, but
Thank you so much.
it is.
Appreciate your time and
Thank you.
careful, thoughtful answers.
And my wild hand gestures. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ashley Vespoli, and I am also a Damascus parent, but I have just another version of the question, and I understand we're living in a world with competing priorities, we're living in a county with competing priorities, and while I'm absolutely advocating for Damascus High School, I want to advocate for MCPS on a broader scale. I 100% commend Dr. Taylor for bringing us back to reality, because our schools have been neglected. Some things that you said tonight really resonated. That our property taxes outperformed the estimates, that some of the wealthiest people in the world live in Montgomery County. And yet the same level of funding for the last 17 years. I have had the pleasure or the plight of listening and being a part of so many Board of Education meetings over the last couple weeks and months. And I have heard from all of my colleagues and parents that are in the trenches with us fighting for basic improvements. I've heard my heart goes out for Twinbrook, my heart goes out for Damascus, my heart goes out for Wooten and Magruder. And so to stand here with a straight face, can you tell me, you just mentioned that to ask for that much more money and there would be some political capital, but is the county executive prepared to go to war with us? Because that's what needs to happen. You'll see me pounding, you ask me to pound. I will pound here. I will pound before the Board of Education. I will pound before the County Council. County Council Member Lukey has been a hell of an advocate, and I'm asking for the county exec to be one as well.
Sure. So thank you for that. And just to clarify, when you said go to war with us, you mean standing side by side and not opposing. So again, to call on Debbie, as my witness, we were sitting there just hours ago with the county executive where he was like, come on, we can do this, we can do this, we can find the money, we can do this plan. Thank goodness Taylor has finally brought these things up and has been willing to take on this fight. And here are ideas to do it. We have an obligation to everyone in the community, the taxpayers, to go through all of his proposals carefully to make sure his assumptions about costs, to make sure his assumptions about state aid, all of those things are correct. And we're trying to do that now on our own and with the superintendent in order to get up for the plan. Obviously, you need the school board, but he is willing to make that fight. I mean, as county executive, in 2020, he went to the voters and said, hey, you've got to undo this very restrictive property tax cap that we had on, which was driving so many of these decisions. Why had that number been flat? Why? Because we had a system that every year actually drove down the property tax rate. The most bizarre thing, from 2000 to 2020, the property tax rate was lower even though the county council had raised the property tax 5 times because it kept the charter amendment that was put on in the 1980s kept driving the property tax lower and lower, and then eventually the council would have to reset it because it was making things unaffordable. So he's been brave enough to go before the public and say, hey, this provision, which has resulted for some of you with lower property tax bills, is driving us in an uncompetitive manner, and it will only turn out to hurt the county. He stood up, demanded action, got the council, got every elected official in the county behind it, and won in a 2-to-1 effort when people said we would never stand a chance to win that referendum. I want to remind everyone right now, the same forces behind that charter amendment wants to put a spending amendment on that will prohibit the growth of spending in the county by no more than inflation. So it wouldn't matter what was happening with schools, what was happening with the number of kids, needs, whatever. We couldn't go beyond that level. These are the types of rules that get them put in place that sound nice, but drive a government ultimately into ruin and the community with it. So I just wanted to put out that word of warning. He is willing to stand up, as he has repeatedly, proposing increases in taxes if necessary to fund our school system. He has done it, I think, 3 times as county executive over 7 budgets. Twice the county council agreed with him. Once they rejected, or did I have it? Huh? Well, they haven't agreed to everything, but they have done twice. They've done some rate increase. This past year, they said no, but I don't know where we will be come March from a revenue outlook and any proposal of taxes. I'm not saying the county executive is already thinking about a tax increase, but we have a lot of flexibility. Knock on wood, if our estimates continue to move forward, if strong parts of our community, of our economy continue to perform, we could be in a good place to meet many of the proposals that the superintendent has laid out. But you will need to work first on the school board. Continue to advocate for the county executive. Don't forget about him, because he needs to hear what people think, and then also the county council. And you got to start working the county council before March 15th, March 17th. You got to start working them. And remember, the capital budget comes in on January 15th. So you'll need to start working on them right away to say, we need more resources in order to meet these goals, because it's essential for our young people. It's essential for a good school system, which is essential to a healthy, growing community. So yes, thank you.
I hope that the county exec joins us in the rally. I fully intend that the Board of Education is going to respond favorably to Dr. Taylor and present the ask, and I hope that he is willing to give up some political capital and support the students.
Yes, and I would be surprised if he weren't. And as a guy, he loves a good rally. So thank you all very much for your time. Serendipity, it's 8:40. So we had hoped to end by 8:30, so it's 8:40. I thank you all for all your questions. If you have more comments you want to ask people, remember Dr. James Bridgers is here. Lori Garibay-Aquino, Louisa Cardona, Mary Anderson, many people in the room. Faisal Amin and Corey Orlowski are going to answer your questions. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.